Hey guys, it's Obi here. We are going to start talking about the history of transportation. Previously, in your last assignment, you guys watched a video about the Oregon Trail. So we did the Oregon Trail activity, then we watched that video, and hopefully that video helped you guys understand a little bit about how difficult life was in the 1800s, specifically with transportation, which is what this class deals with. So the Oregon Trail was dangerous. We had a lot of risks on the trail to get from Oklahoma to the Oregon Trail. Um, Specifically, we had to really worry about the time the journey took. It could take upwards of 6 months. We really had to plan for when we actually left. We had to be careful about different types of diseases, to the point that we made sure we had enough food. And then, even then, with all those preparations, it still was unfortunately fairly common to have somebody pass away on that journey. Um, and even down to the simple things that we take for granted today of just crossing a river. It was a huge deal to have to forge a river. So, having said that, we're kind of going to go into the history of transportation today. We're going to go over a brief overview, very brief overview of kind of where we've come from and where we're going to head. And this will set us up for the rest of the semester. Okay? So, first and foremost, what is the first form of transportation? Um, the first form of transportation, really, if you could guess, is walking. Believe it or not, our two little feet help us get around from A to B. Have for a long, long, long time. Before we had any other form of transportation available, walking was where it's at, okay? So we did that for a very long time. And then we get to about 10,000 years ago, or 8,000 BC, we come up with this little thing called a boat. So the oldest known boat was a hollowed out tree. If you guys can see it here, this little boat was very small, probably couldn't carry very much in it. It was really probably just designed for fishing and catching food on the water. So it was the most simplistic form we could have of a boat, but it was kind of one of the first things that we really had to be able to get around, especially to navigate across water. Okay, so it took almost 4,000 years, all the way to 4,500 BC, before somebody realized, hey, we could take this boat or these canoes and we could actually put a sail on. This is a reproduction sailboat, and this really changed stuff. So now we were able to harness the wind currents, and by doing that, we were able to travel long distances across the sea or traverse up and down rivers and canals. Well, we didn't really have canals back then, so I guess rivers. So we see that we had quite a few different opportunities as far as um, sea transportation or naval transportation. But my next question to you is, what is the most important invention, in your opinion, for the transportation industry? So if you guessed the wheel, you nailed it. Okay, you're doing a great job. So by far, without question, the most important invention for the transportation industry is the wheel. So we started out with the very simple wheel where basically it was just a piece of wood and we cut it into a circle and put a wooden pin in the middle and it rotated around that and we were good to go. So this did a couple things. This allowed us, first and foremost, to actually carry quite a bit of goods just by having these wheels. We could reduce the friction or the effort required for us to move stuff from A to B. Okay? So over time, we kind of realized that, hey, this is a little bit of an issue. There's a lot of friction actually involved where that wood and wood meets. So what they did was they added a metal hub. So there's actually a metal shaft on this one. And then they also realized that, hey, maybe wood isn't the best thing in the world to have on the outside. This one actually does show a metal band around it also, but probably the first ones I could guarantee you did not have that metal band. So this one actually has a metal band around it, and that is actually the tire on this wagon wheel. For one, it keeps the whole thing together, and two, it's actually going to limit the wear on that wheel, okay? So it wasn't until late 1800s that we started to see a rubber wheel like this. So this was something we would have seen on the Model T Ford or some of the very early prototype vehicles. And then obviously now, starting in, we'll say the 1930s, we started to see an actual tire like we would understand or recognize today. So obviously, the wheel has come a long, long, long way. So one example of things that we were able to do on the wheel was in 3500 BC. We realized we could take a wheel and put it on a cart, and this increases tenfold how much cargo we can carry. So like I said, this is just one of the revolutionary things of the wheel. It allowed us to move tons of more goods at a time, and by doing that, it allowed us to spread out as a population. It kind of limited us from being a hunter-gatherer population, and now we were able to actually settle in different areas. So this was one of the things that really helped the expansion of the human civilization. So the next big thing that happened, and if you notice, the time between each one of these are quite a bit. So we started at 8000 BC, then it was about 3,500 years. We introduced sailboats, and then it's roughly the same time we invent the wheel. But we go to 2000 BC, which is another 1,500 years, and we have something really cool that happens, and that is that horses are domesticated, and they are used for transportation. So the big benefit of a horse is horses are very, very strong. Horse and oxen, and just like we used in the Oregon Trail. But horses and oxen are very strong. We can hitch a wagon to them and use that as basically our motor to get us around. So it eliminates the excess energy that we have to put out to do the transportation itself. And again, we can carry a lot more by doing that. So that was a very, very large deal. Once it took a long time before horses were actually domesticated to the point that they were docile and trusted us. The wild Mustangs definitely were not really interested in having leashes hooked to them. Okay? Reins, that's what I'm trying to say. So we go a really long time again until we hit 312 BC. And in 312 BC, we have our first real road. Okay, so they eventually built, the road is called the Appian Way, built by the Romans, and they eventually built 50,000 miles of road. Now, the thing is, if you look at this road, you'll see that it's actually pretty rough. This road is, I would say, a little bit bumpy, but you got to remember this was actually designed for the soldiers to be able to get from area to area. So it really wasn't designed necessarily for moving people or anything like that. I'm sure it was obviously, I'm sorry, let me say that again. It wasn't really designed for moving carts and being extremely comfortable. It was designed to be a quick path for troops to move from area to area in the Roman times. However, I think they've really found the utility of these, and then that has changed pretty much everything. Okay, so we're going to go about another 1,000 years, a little bit more, actually about 2,000, and we're going to have our next major technological achievement, and that is in 1662, Blaise Pascal is going to invent a public horse-drawn bus with a regular route schedule and a fare system. So this was the first time that we had enough people in one area where it was necessary for us to provide transportation for multiple people at one time. So if you can see, this is kind of the precursor of a train, okay? So it didn't have an engine that we would understand it, but we do have two horses hooked to a wagon that's actually riding on a rail right here that you can see. And we have multiple people that are paying a fare, and they are getting transported to an area and then let off. So in 1814, we have the first thing that we would, the first vehicle that we would really associate with a train that looks like a train and acts like a train. So the very first train is built by George Stephenson. He built the first practical steam-powered railway locomotive called Locomotion number 1. This thing was not able to travel very fast, and if we can see, this thing was actually built out of wood, which seems slightly dangerous. But this little engine was able to transport ore cars, typically used in mines, and it was used very extensively for that. Okay, had a very low speed. I think this thing only was able to travel 10 miles an hour, maybe 15. Don't quote me on that. I honestly can't remember for sure. Okay, so moving on. In 1885, I want you to notice that Karl Benz builds the world's first practical automobile powered by an internal combustion engine. So this engine is pretty cool. This is the first time that we use a powered device that's not horse drawn to actually get us from A to B, and we can carry multiple people. This was revolutionary technology for the time. It looks a little goofy now. It's like a tricycle. It's got this cute little tiny steering wheel right in the middle. But this was able to get us from A to B. Now, it wasn't the epitome of comfort like we would expect today, but this was pretty neat, guys. Okay, so in 1903, we have the wonderful Orville and Wilbur Wright, who fly the first motor-driven airplane. This was a huge deal. So the first motor-driven airplane was the first time that we actually had flight in the air. Now, we did have, previous to that, hot air balloons, but this is the first time that we could actually control our flight independent of wind. Okay, so we could actually fly any direction we wanted to go, and it was powered. Now, obviously, this was a very early one, and it didn't do the best job. In fact, the first one I think only flew for like 22 seconds, and then it crashed, if I remember right. Wasn't the best, but we realized that we could prove this concept, and this is the important thing with all three of these, whether it's the train, or the automobile, or the plane. All three of these happened over the span of basically 100 years. So we went from 1814 to 1903, and all three of these were a proof of concept and showed us that, hey, we can actually make travel something really special. So that is kind of why we're here. We are here to learn about those different types of transportation systems: planes, trains, automobiles, trucking, and then the automotive industry. I already said that. But so what we're going to do in future modules is we are going to start talking about those trains and those industries and do some research on them. And then as we do that, hopefully we'll explore and understand a little bit more the industries or the opportunities that are available in the industries. Okay? So all right, guys, I hope this helped. I will catch you on the next one. Bye.